What a great word for all of us here this morning. If you're a guest with us here today, we are incredibly grateful that you're here with us, whether you found us online or somebody invited you to come with them today. We are glad that you're here for what we're calling Vision Sunday here around Anthem. In fact, if you have a Bible this morning, I want to jump right into what we're talking about today. Genesis chapter 12, verse 1 through 5. You can turn there. My message title today is called Walking by Faith. Walking by Faith. Today, my goal is to share vision for the next 2 years of Anthem Church, where we believe God is leading us, where we believe God is calling us, what our next step is, what's ahead of us, what we can be praying about, dreaming about, coming together around here as God's people in this place. We're going to talk about some exciting opportunities we have that are in front of us that we believe are the next steps for us as a church that we can all be part of here in this room. And then ultimately, I want to help you have a sense of how you can be part of it, how you can be part of all that God's going to do here as we move into the future together. Before I get to specifics of vision, I want to start with a passage that's filled with vision. It's filled with the vision of what God calls us to as we follow him. A vision for what it looks like for your life as you follow Jesus in your life, from the life of Abram as he begins to hear from God for the first time, as he begins to respond to what God has to do for him. It's a story about walking by faith and not by sight. It's a story about saying yes to God even though we don't totally know the destination. It's a story about saying, God, I trust you even though you're not giving me all the details. And that's a message that really applies to every single one of us and every season of our life. Genesis chapter 12, verse 1 through 3 to begin with, says, the Lord had said to Abram, go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land that I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. I just want to start there here this morning. This has been called one of the maybe top 10 most important passages in all the Bible. You're like, oh, I didn't realize this would be a top 10. Besides Jesus' crucifixion, his resurrection, maybe God's creation of the world, and a few other texts that are all around the Bible, this is so important. Why? Because creation had been on a downward trajectory from creation. From the very beginning, man had been getting further and further away from God. They sinned in the garden, and they're trying to build big buildings to amass their own trust in themselves and believe they can reach God through their own efforts. All these things that are happening all along the way. We know the story of Noah and the ark and how God had to wipe out so many people because the world was going the wrong direction. It's at this moment that God, through just a man like you and me, decides he's going to change the course of human history forever and ever that we now encounter here today. He gives a few words to this man named Abram. The first is go. The life of faith always begins with the word go. It might sound to you like the word move, or it might sound like the word obey, or it might sound like the word surrender, but it all comes back to some action that God's calling us to give, to do in our own lives. Some of you, when you first gave your life to Jesus at the beginning, that was your first time to say yes to a call from God to go. This is what God shows up to Abram. It says, I have something for you to do. I want you to go and walk by faith and not by sight, to do what I've called you to do, no matter what concerns you have or what details you lack or whatever's in front of you, to just walk by faith, to trust me, to live for me, and to go. The next word he says, I want you to go, and then I want you to go from. That's just a key word. The Lord had said to Abram, go from. What does he say from? This is the word I don't like as much, actually. Goes okay until I hear from. Goes okay until I hear what it's going to cost me. Goes okay until I hear the rest of the details. This is what Abraham hears in this moment. He says, what are you going to leave from? Go from your people, from your culture, from your nation. Right in the text it says, from your country, your people, and your family. What God's saying to him ultimately is, I want you to go from all that you know. This is what Abram's going to have to do. He's going to have to leave all behind. Everything that makes sense, everything that's comfortable, everything that is all working together. And he had created a large business, a lot of people working for him, had a lot of possessions. He's living in a certain place where he knew how to live, what he was supposed to be about. His family was there, the culture was there, the language was there. And God says, I want you to go, but you're going to have to leave some things behind in order to go where I'm calling you to. By the way, the walk with Jesus requires us. If he's going to be the leader, it requires us to keep going, therefore leaving behind wherever we were beforehand. Sometimes I just would rather stay where I am, right? I'd rather do what I'm doing. This makes sense. This house, this job, this pursuit of you, the rhythm of my life, the way I'm spending my money, the way I'm spending my time, all these kinds of things. I'd rather just stay here. God, can I go and stay? But faith never allows you to go and stay. Faith always requires you to leave things behind so that you can go where God is calling you to go in the future. Go from your country, your people, your family to a land I will show you. Like, God, couldn't you give me a little more details than that? Can you give me a map? Can you give me some destination? He said, no, Abram, I just want you to point your life in the direction I tell you to point your life. I want you to point it that way. Not where you are, not where you've been. I want you to point it that way and go that way. By the way, he's going to call Abram to go to a place he's never been before. Nobody he's probably lived around has been there before. Maybe he's got a servant or two. They're like, I kind of passed through that country one time, but maybe not even that. His family hasn't been there. He's lived way in a whole different part of the country right before then. He's traveled already 600 miles earlier in his life to get to the city he's living now. And now the city that God's going to call him to, the land he's going to call him to, is another 400 miles away from where he is. But God says, go. You have to leave some things behind, and I will show you along the way. Walking by faith and not by sight requires us, if we're going to live this life that God's calling us to. And I don't know where everybody is spiritually here this morning. Some of you may be asking questions about faith, asking questions about who Jesus is, asking questions of yourself. What do I actually believe? Maybe you've been to church, but what do I actually believe? And those are great questions to ask, because until you answer them, you can't really live it out. You can't own it for yourself. If it's just something that maybe your parents believed or others believed, they told you that's the right thing to believe, but you're not sure if you believe it, it just won't go where it's supposed to go. You have to wrestle with it yourself. And Abram had to wrestle with it even in this moment. Do I believe him? Like, not just believe that he exists, but do I believe him in a trusting way that I'm willing to go where he's calling me to go and say, God, I'd love for you to give me some more details about this land that you will show me. And God says, no, that's not the life of faith. That's not the walk of faith. I will show you as you take a step. As you take a step in the direction I'm calling you to, then I'll show you the next step that's in front of you. I know when Christine and I stepped out 12 years ago to church plant from scratch, at 26 years old, we're pretty sure, like, maybe if we just talk about Jesus and we're faithful and our hearts are pure, maybe people will come and their lives will be changed, and we just took a step. And I remember I kept praying, God, can you give me some assurance that it'll be successful, right? Anybody ever prayed? Like, if you're going to make a decision, like, God, if you tell me a little more of the story, then I'll do it. But until then, I'm just going to keep praying. I'm going to be really faithful to pray, right? I was really faithful to pray, which was really me trying to slow it down and try to find some assurance that everything was going to go the way that I hoped. And maybe some of you in your businesses are that way. Maybe some of you in school are that way. Maybe you're like thinking, well, if I just go to this church or go to that school, maybe I'll finally find the one I'm supposed to marry one day. God, if you'll tell me that I'll find the one, then I'll go do it. All those kind of things. But that's not what God said to Abram. Abram, he said, I want you to go. I want you to go that direction. And it's going to take you a long time to get there. And you've never been there before. And not many people around you know anywhere where you're going, but I want you to go there, and I will show you along the way the steps you are supposed to take. This is the life of faith as we follow God to where he wants us to be. Genesis chapter 12, verse 4, so what does Abram do? Verse 4 says, so Abram went. That's the key phrase. So Abram went, as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old. Man, he's probably like, Lord, if you could have just told me when I was 30, right? I would have had just enough experience in life that maybe I could have gotten there and just a bit more energy. That would have been great, God. But God decided at 75 to call Abram. And he set out from Haran, and he took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated, and the people they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan. And the second important phrase is, and they arrived there. So Abram went, 75 years old, not 20, not 30, not 40, 75 years. God says, now's the time for you to go fulfill the purpose on your life, to go be in the place that I've called you to be. By the way, this was a significant sacrifice for Abram. Not a small sacrifice, not an easy ask. He would have to pack up everything he had, all of his life, all of his relationships at 75 years old, by the way. All the things he had would have taken him months to prepare these things, to tell all the people, you know what? We're picking up and we're moving. Where are we going? The Lord's going to show us as we go. Can you give us a little more detail? No, that's all I got. Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. Packed up all his stuff. It would have taken him months at the least to gather all those things together, and then they would have traveled. And this travel is about 400 miles from where they are to where they're going. Desert, going through people who didn't like them, didn't speak their language, a lack of safety, all the things you can imagine on the road. They don't have enough animals for everybody to ride something, so they would have gone at a very slow pace. If he's 75, there's probably other people who are 75. If he's got a lot of people with him, there's probably babies with them, small children with them. They would have taken probably, we guess, 3 to 4 months by foot to get from where they were to where they were going 400 miles away. Like, can't you just get on a plane, right? Can't you just get in a car? Well, they couldn't do that. The call was great. The sacrifice was great for them to walk by faith and to go. But the key words are, so Abram went. And not only did Abram start the journey, but Abram finished the journey. He arrived and he did what God had called him to do, and he made it to what we now call the Promised Land. The Promised Land. By the way, if you go back a couple verses in verse 2 and 3, he gives a blessing to Abram. He says, look, it's contingent. If you'll go, if you'll do what I am calling you to do, then this is what I will do. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And here's the phrase that's so important in these verses. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. See, the blessing was going to follow his obedience. God said, I have a go for you. I have something I want you to do. If you'll do what I'm asking you to do and the way I'm asking you to do it, then there will be blessing that will follow your life. By the way, in your life and mine, reality, and I can just speak from my own story here this morning, there are so many times God's just good beyond explanation. Sometimes I get it wrong. I don't go. I hold my feet back. I don't do exactly what he's calling me to do at the timing he is. And he's just good beyond that. He's a good father who loves me. But there's other times in my life where I can see if I hadn't done what he told me to do, that something wouldn't have happened in my life as a result of it. Maybe some of you have that same thing. This is what it is for Abram. God says, look, I want you to go, and I love you, and I'm your father, and all those things, but I need you to go to the place I'm calling you, because unless you go to the place I'm calling you, then you can't be blessed in the way that I so deeply want to bless you in your life. And what is that blessing? All nations of the world will be blessed through one man. One man. How is that true? It's because Abram had some kids who have some kids who have some kids who have some kids who have some kids, and it keeps going and going. And then they have a child, and that child's name is Jesus Christ. And when Jesus Christ is born, the fulfillment of the promise that all nations on earth would be blessed is fully come to pass. Israel is blessed via all those things, but the full fulfillment comes through the person of Jesus Christ, that all people on earth would be blessed through him. And so we say, Abram, thank you for that small sacrificial act of faith, because when you acted in faith, now we've all benefited as a result. Your one act of faith changed the world, changed all of human history forever. Isn't that incredible? One man, one woman saying yes to God can change entire family trees, entire nations, entire peoples, entire cities. You may not believe it, but in your heart, inside of you, if you will do what God is calling you to do, God can unlock something in you that's going to bless you, yes, but it's also going to bless all the people around you in ways you may not even know their names, you may never meet them, but their lives can be changed by the ripple of your own faith as you walk by faith in your own life. What separates most people in this life is the courage to say yes when God says go. That's just the fact of the matter. What separates most people in this life is those who have the courage to say yes when God says go. For us, may we be people who say yes when God says go. What does go mean for me? Well, it might mean reconciling a relationship. It might mean sometimes saying sorry when I'm at fault. It might be forgiving my enemies, those who harm me. It might be doing something to benefit other people. It might be crossing the street to talk to my neighbors and share the good message of Jesus Christ and how it's changed my life. It might be me doing practical things for my family and caring for them. Go can look like so many different things that doesn't always look like a change of location, but it looks like a change of my heart, a change of my desires, a purification of who I am to say, God, I hear you saying go, so I will go and I will do what you've called me to do. That is the life of faith. That is the walk of faith. And apart from that, it's very hard to know and please God with our lives. Here at Anthem, as I use that as an opportunity to talk about Anthem, as the people of Anthem, we want to be people who, when God says go, go. We want to be people who don't hold back, who don't need every detail to be mapped out in front of us. We're going to plan, we're going to think, we're not going to check our brains at the door. We're going to do the work that God calls us to do, but we're going to walk by faith and not just by human sight. We're going to walk by God's sight. When God sees something that should be done, we're going to say, God, if you can help me understand it, if you can help me discern it, then I will be the one who will say yes to you when you say go in my own life. Here at Anthem, here's the truth. God's doing so much among us. Men and women are giving their lives to Christ. Children's lives are being changed. Adults' lives are being changed. People are being discipled in the faith. We're growing. We're learning. We're doing things in our community. We're doing things for the world. But the reality is we can't just stay where we are. We're just like Abram. We have to be a people who says, when God says go, we will continue to go. Not just we went last year, or we went 10 years ago, or we went 30 years ago, or we said yes to God in the past, and that's incredible, and that'll just carry me into the future. No, I've got to be a man, a woman who says yes to God every time he says it's time to go. We can't follow God and stay as we are as a church. We can't walk by faith and hold on only to where we've been. We must take hold of what's in front of us in the future. Walking by faith requires leaving things behind and going forward. It always has, and it always will. And by the way, we're a church who has embraced that. We've been a church 2.5 years old, I think exactly this month, 2.5 years old, who we had great histories. 2 churches said, you know what? We hear God saying go. We will leave behind things we love, the things that were in the past, things that made sense, things that were comfortable. We will leave those behind so that we can say yes to God and where God is leading. We have that in our DNA, in our blood. It's been the choices we made to get us to this point. And some of you are new to this journey, and you weren't here then, but you're here now, and you're catching that. It's in our DNA. We are men and women who are endeavoring to walk by faith, to be obedient, to be surrendered, and to follow God wherever he might lead. Your leaders have been praying for the future. We've been praying. I've been praying. Our elders have been praying. Our elder couples have been praying. Our staff have been praying. We've been saying, God, will you show us, is there a go in this season for us as a church? And we today feel a great deal of confidence. You can never be 100%, but the most confident we could possibly be at this moment that God has shown us the go that's in front of us as we prayed and sought God. If I just boil it down to a couple really basic things this morning, and then we'll get more detailed here today. We believe God has called us to reach this city for Christ. I mean, at the end of the day, if we just pull everything aside, how are we programming this? What are we doing this? How are we going to do that? If we pull all that aside, right, and get down to the basics, we feel called to make much of Jesus and to reach our city and our world for Jesus Christ, to complete the Great Commission, the mission that God has entrusted to his church. That's what we believe. And we're praying that every church all across our city and all across our world would catch the same vision, that we won't be alone on the top of the mountain, that we will go if we're alone, but every church would catch the vision and they would thrive and find vitality and find life in Christ and share the message of the gospel with those that are around them. We believe that God wants us to give our very best to the next generation. We believe that as leaders. We've got to give our best leaders, our best time, our best of our resources, our best of our energies, because we know that there's a critical step where we pass the baton of faith to the next generation of believers, the next generation of children and students, the next generation that comes after us, that a lot of our role in this life is not so much what God's going to do in my generation only, but it's what God wants to do in me so I can pass it to the next generation. So God can do in them so they can pass it to the next generation. We believe God help us reach our city, help us give our best to this next generation that's in front of us. Today, what I want to talk about is our 2-year plan on a more detailed level of what we believe God is calling us to as Anthem Church. And some of you might be here for the very first time. I'm actually so glad that you're here because you're coming, you may be visiting, you're like, okay, finally we came on a Sunday, they're going to cast vision for the future, different than what I thought they were going to do. This is a great time for you to be here because it gives you a sense of like, okay, if this is where they're going, is this where I feel like I'm supposed to be going? Is this a direction that I feel like God's leading me so that you can find that here together? We're going to call our church here this morning to rally around a 2-year vision for the future that will touch every part of our ministry, every part of our outreach as a church, and every part of our facility as a church here this morning. So I'm going to show a video that I shot a couple weeks ago because I knew it would take me too long to explain it if I did here this morning and all of you would go home before I finished it, and I didn't want that to happen. So I boiled it all down to one video that's going to cast a whole vision for what we're calling All In here around our church. Let's show that video.
In Matthew chapter 16, verse 18, Jesus said, "I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it." This was the birth of the church, an incredible promise that exists even for us today. He is building his church all around the world, and he is building his church here at Anthem. We have had an incredible first 2 years as a church. 2 congregations have become one. Over 200 people have raised their hand and made a decision to follow Jesus. And our growth in kids and students and young families has been incredible. 2 years in, we can see God's grace all around us. And yet we face hurdles that will inhibit the future of all that God is doing among us if we don't take action. Our first hurdle is that our city is growing increasingly unchurched and dechurched. People are attending church less, and some have never even been to a church for anything other than a wedding or a funeral. Within 10 miles of Anthem, there are as much as 400,000 unchurched people right now. That includes 100,000 students and children. None of these people are hearing the life-changing message of Jesus. We have to ask ourselves, what does God want us to do about this? How deeply does he care about each of these people? And if we do nothing, what will be the impact on eternity? The second hurdle relates to Anthem kids. These days we are having between 100 and 150 children coming to Anthem every single weekend. That is so exciting. However, our kid spaces are not what they need to be to take us into the future. For one, they are split apart and located in 2 different areas of our building. This causes a great deal of confusion for our first-time guests as they try to navigate our many halls and staircases to get their younger kids to their downstairs rooms, their older kids to the upstairs rooms. Imagine a single mother coming for the first time and what her experience would feel like, and whether she would even return to be impacted by the gospel. This split-level kids orientation also leaves us with kid spaces that are only partially secure, not up to the security standards of our modern world. We have to do something about that. Otherwise, this will impact the future of us reaching young families and won't live up to our anthem that we give our best to the next generation. Right now, we stand at a defining moment for Anthem. We could easily settle in and be comfortable and play it safe as we enter years 3 and 4. Or we could believe that God has even greater things for us to do and act in faith together. I'm excited to announce that we have decided to act in faith and ask the Anthem Church family to rally around our mission, our vision, and our anthems over the next 2 years in a vision and generosity challenge we are calling All In. All In will touch every part of our ministry here at Anthem, especially in 3 major areas. The first one is in the area of ministry. Over the next 2 years, we will give our very best to kids, students, adults, and families by providing strategic opportunities to learn, to worship, to serve, and to connect. And we're praying and believing that God will use us to lead hundreds of people into a relationship with Jesus. By the end of our next 2 years, we imagine our church growing significantly. In fact, we expect to be ministering to over 200 children and students and over 400 adults every single week. The second priority is in the area of outreach. Over the next 2 years, we will be strategic about reaching out to the 400,000 unchurched families in our city who live within 10 miles of Anthem. That includes 100,000 unchurched children and students who aren't hearing the gospel for themselves. In addition, we will take over 100 people on mission trips, and we'll generously support our strategic local and global mission partners through ongoing support through Give Back Sunday and Feed My Starving Children. The third priority is in the area of facility. Over the next 2 years, we're going to maximize the incredible location and facility that God has entrusted to us by creating a fantastic first-floor kids space that is completely remodeled and fully secure. This will be an amazing change to our facility and will make a kingdom difference for years to come. In addition, we have plans to dramatically expand our lobby space, to create more opportunities for connection and conversations, to update our worship space, to create an integrated adult classroom space both upstairs and down, and fix the drainage problem with our west parking lot. The primary goal of All In is 100% engagement. We want every person to play a significant part in helping us achieve our mission of reaching our city for Jesus. The second goal is the financial one. In order to accomplish all that we believe God has laid in front of us for the future, we are looking to raise $4.5 million over the next 2 years to fulfill the All In vision. This includes funding our ongoing ministry, as well as all the new projects we are beginning together. So let me tell you what this is going to look like. We're going to change up how our giving at Anthem works, and instead of having the separate ministry funds that we have done in the past, whenever it has been time to build a building or raise money for mission causes, we're going to create one big kingdom ministry fund called All In. If we didn't launch All In, if we just continued doing what we were already doing, we would receive about $2.25 million over the next 2 years based on our previous giving. This is included in the All In goal. All In adds an additional $2.25 million for a total of $4.5 million. We're going to do this for a couple of very important reasons. First of all, sometimes when you go into a giving project, people feel like they're being asked to redirect their giving away from our ongoing ministry and instead direct it towards the project. We want to avoid all of that, instead put it all in one fund. Also, sometimes when it is a special project, people who haven't been giving feel like they aren't sure where to start giving or don't feel like the project was intended for them. But in this moment, if we're going to be the people God is calling us to be, we need everyone to be all in and give towards the vision. So this isn't some over and above campaign. This is an everyone right here, right now push to seek after the heart of God and see what it looks like for us to be all in and obedient to what God wants us to do. So this is what I'm challenging and asking you to do. I'm asking you to pray and see what the Lord would place on your heart to do in order to go all in at Anthem. To faithfully seek after God and ask Him to show you how He wants you to be generous so that we can move this forward together. On a personal note, Christina and I and the Jenkins family, we are all in. We love what God is doing among us, and we are fully committed to the future. In fact, we are excited. If you feel the same, I'm asking you to join me and our family by going all in so that we can all be part of watching God do a miracle among us. There's a story in the New Testament about a man who was paralyzed, and his 4 friends heard that Jesus was in a nearby house. They picked up their friend and they brought him to Jesus. They even climbed up on the roof so that they could lower him past the crowds. It took everything they had, but it was worth it. Jesus healed him, and this man's life was changed forever. I'm asking us to go all in and do this for our friends and families who don't yet know Jesus. They live all around us. We work with them. We go to school with them. We live by them, and they matter to Jesus. It will take everything we have, but it will be worth it. So join me, Anthem Church. Let's go all in together.
Well, that is a big piece of our vision over the next 2 years. I want to take a moment and detail, again, just a couple pieces this morning. You'll be able to watch that later, so you feel like I can't take all that in just a couple minutes together. You can watch that on our website here this week and kind of figure that out again. But I want to detail a couple parts that I'm especially excited about. Number one, related to our ministry. We just believe God has a lot. He's already doing so much among us, and we want to go to the next level with that. What does that mean? In our kids areas with Anthem kids and Anthem students, we just want to keep taking that to the next level, discipling in greater ways, reaching more students and children for Christ, ministering to them on a regular basis so they can understand the gospel for themselves. In our group life, with our adults, we want to have great discipleship opportunities to grow and have a deeper relationship with Christ. In our worship environments, when we come together, to continue to put Christ at the center of them, to make much of Jesus when we gather together here in this room, and ultimately to fulfill our vision, to say, God, will you help us in the area of ministry to help people follow Jesus and share his story? What we say is our mission. We exist to help people follow Jesus. That's why we exist. We don't exist to make much of Anthem. We don't exist to make much of ourselves. We exist to make much of Jesus and help people to follow him in every way that he would lead. I'm excited about what we're going to do in ministry. We're just going to keep growing. We're 2.5 years old, and God's already doing so much. Now we say, God, help us to go to the next level in our ministry here together. Secondly, in the area of outreach, I just want to share this map again that was in the video just briefly, the 10 miles around Anthem. We're right in the middle. There's 10 miles in any direction, about a 15-minute drive. How many of you live in that 10 miles around Anthem somewhere? Yeah, great deal of us live within that. We basically say, as a leadership, we're saying, this is our mission field. This is the mission field that God's planted us. When people so many years ago, 30 plus years ago, were on this land praying that God would use them to reach this community and reach the city for Christ, we're saying that's our mission field. It's like our Jerusalem. When the Bible says, go to your Jerusalem, your Judea, your Samaria, the ends of the earth. This 10 miles, we're saying, is our primary mission field. We want to reach Uganda. We want to reach out to Haiti, reach out to Guatemala, these other places in the world. But our primary mission field is all around us. These are people who work with me, work with you. They're people who live by you, people you have relationships with, these 10 miles that are all around us. What's important about this, and we've done a lot of fact-finding, a lot of looking into it, there's approximately 400,000 people in that circle that are unchurched or de-churched. That means either they're de-churched, meaning they used to go to church, they left the church. Maybe they went to some things, maybe they grew up as a child, but they don't understand how their faith really connects to their life. They don't go to church anymore. Or unchurched, meaning they've never really been to church. They may have been to a wedding or a funeral at some point, but they don't understand why the church exists. In fact, they're like, well, maybe the church is taking tax money away from our city. They have that kind of frame of reference as a taking rather than a giving that a church can do to its community. 400,000. What's more startling about the number is that of that 400,000, approximately 100,000 of them are children and students. That means nobody's taking them to church. Nobody's helping them understand these stories of our faith that have changed our life, that changed the way we think about life, the ways we think about eternity, the way we think about what matters beyond this life. Nobody's giving them an opportunity to at least hear from themselves, discover for themselves, and make the choices on their own. God, if you left the 99 for the one, what would you do for the 400,000? And God's already on the move. And he would love for us to be part of what he's doing. We say, God, we want to go. We hear you saying go, Lord, like you said to Abraham. That means we got to leave some comfort, leave some of the ways we spend our time, the way I spend our money, those things in our life. We got to go across the street to our neighbors. We got to go across the hall to our coworkers. We got to go to our family members at holidays and begin to share the message with them. Lord, help us to be the people that do those things. I'm excited about that in the area of outreach. In fact, this spring we're going to go out to like 20,000+ homes, and we're going to deliver the message of the gospel through the Jesus film and an invitation from our church. We're going to go door to door as a church. It's a big project that we're going to do together and say, God, use us to impact our city for the gospel, for your name, your renown, and your glory. The third area I'm excited about is in the area of facility, and because we just kind of rapid fired through them, and probably some of you had the most questions about what we're doing with the facility, I want to just take a moment to talk about that. In the area of facility, first of all, we just say, God, how can we use this incredible facility and location? By the way, we have an incredible location in our city. People can get here from almost anywhere throughout our city. That's why the circle is as big as it is in terms of a 15-minute drive. It's amazing. People can get here from anywhere. Thank God for the faith of those who went before us that located this and believed God was leading the church to come and buy this land and build these buildings that are already here today. God, how can we steward that? How can we use that? First thing we're going to do in terms of the next step for us as a church, we're going to create a first floor, fantastic, secure kids wing for our children. That is the most amazing opportunity we have in front of us. For birth all the way through 6th grade, if you think right out these doors, all the rest of this building that's located here, it'll all be dedicated to kids. So instead of having some kids up, some kids down, some kids in areas where other people are passing through and it's not fully secure in those areas, we're going to say, God, how can we bring them all to one location, to minister to them in one location, to secure them in one location so that they can be in that area together? That's going to be an incredible piece of our facility and how we can maximize what God has already given to us. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to expand our lobby space. This is a picture that shows really looking out these doors that direction. We're going to double the size of our total lobby here in this next step for us as a church. We know some of us have been in the lobby on Sundays between services. It gets kind of crazy. And even if you can find your way through, there's nowhere to sit out there. We want to provide opportunities for people to connect, to build relationships, to stay and pray with one another, to be together here on Sundays in the in-between of what happens here on our building week in and week out, which also, by the way, offers opportunities for us to do other events in our lobby space and do other things in those spaces during the week. Baby showers, wedding showers, we have other opportunities to use that when that's the only thing that's happening in our building. Here's another picture that shows our expanded lobby space. We're, once again, about doubling our space. We're going to impact every classroom that's in our building, every adult room. They're all going to be renovated in some way, updated in some way, as well as many of them are going to be brought to a similar location rather than being spread out. Many of you have been to our adult rooms. They're spread out in all kinds of different places if you can find them. We're going to have some upstairs in our gymnasium, about half and half downstairs below them, so they're going to be in a more centrally located area. And for all of our staff, we're giving up. We're saying, God, we hear you. When you say go, we're going to give up what we like. We're going to give up all of our offices at this era to give that all to our kids' space because we believe that's the best use of the facility down here. So we have offices down at the end. We're going to leave all that behind. We're going to eventually have newer offices in a different part, somewhat in the gym area of the building, but for a time we'll be also without offices, working in rooms on laptops, doing whatever we have to do to make this a possibility in front of us. As well, Pastor Andrew's sitting here on the front row. We sent Pastor Andrew out to our parking lot one day and to see if he could catch anything. Close. He didn't actually get anything, but he had the opportunity. It was possible. We're going to fix our parking lot. How many of you have ever tried to park on the side of the gym where there's rain, or last week it was frozen? Anybody ever tried to park over there? You pull in that area and you're like, no, I'm not going here, and you find a different place to go? We're going to fix all that. It's a little bit difficult. It's not the easiest fix in the world to make that the way it needs to be, but we're going to do that as part of this process during these years, improve the outs of our building, as well as just give us 20 new parking spots on a Sunday, which is very important for us to be able to have. We have 20 more spots when it's raining for people to park out there, which will be incredible. Bigger picture. This is our property that God has given to us. Location God has given to us, 26 acres here on Garnett that God's called us to use for the future. And this is a stewardship, isn't it? God, this is your building, your land for your purposes. How can we best use it for your glory, for reaching people, to make space in our hearts and our buildings for the people that you're bringing here in the months and years to come so that they can hear the gospel for themselves, to benefit the lives of children and students so that they can hear the gospel, so that adults can come to faith and be discipled in their faith and keep growing in their faith. God, there's a stewardship, and there's people that have gone before us many years before who bought this land, prayed on this land. They were praying for lives to be changed, for God's glory and renown to be shout forth from this location. We say, God, we hear you in that. We want to steward what you've given to maximize everything that we have here in this place. Those are pieces of vision that I'm excited about, and we'll talk more about that in the weeks to come here around Anthem. I believe this is a defining moment for Anthem. You know what a defining moment is? Those moments in our life where you can kind of go to the left or to the right. Maybe it's not even right and wrong. good and bad. It's just a left or a right. You can go this way or you can go that way. But those moments end up defining the rest of your life. It might be like myself, when I finished college, I thought I was moving back to California at the end of that, but God called us to stay. We didn't understand it fully. Not sure we liked it in every moment we heard it, but we said, God, if you say stay, then we will stay, and you'll have to tell us the rest of the details along the way because they didn't give it all to us at the beginning. Those are defining moments. We're here now, 20 years later. Our family, our kids are growing up in Oklahoma. They know Oklahoma. This is their home. Defining moments for all of us. This is a defining moment for Anthem. What we're calling All In is a chance for all of us to be in with what God's calling us to do. We need all of us. It can't just be a vision of a few leaders, a few people that are going to do it on their own. It's going to take the body of Christ coming together, being the body of Christ, all of us being in with the vision that God has entrusted to our leaders and to our people as we're moving forward in the future. That means we got to grab hands and hearts and rally together around our mission, our vision, and our anthems that we make much of Jesus. That's just who we are. We make much of Jesus because he's worthy of us making much of him. We do whatever it takes. We don't just do what's comfortable or what's easy, but our DNA is we want to do whatever it takes to reach people with the message of the gospel. We give our best to the next generation. It's an intentional choice that we're making to give our best to the next generation. And we believe life is better together. Those are our anthems. It's going to take us grabbing hands and grabbing hearts and rallying together around what God has called us to do and completing the great work that God has given to us to reach our city, to impact the next generation, to bring God glory, to just be obedient, to be surrendered, to say we will go when you say go, wherever you say go, whenever you say go, for the sake of the lives of other people. It's going to require a lot of us to do it, to be honest. The last 6 months, if we weren't doing this, would have been a lot easier for me. The next 6 months would be a lot easier for me if we didn't do this. The next 2 years would be a lot easier for me if we didn't do this, and a lot easier for some of us, because what's it going to require? It's going to require sacrifice. It's going to require sacrifice of our time. It's going to require sacrifice of our money. It's just going to require a lot of things where we're going to have to leave some things behind so that we can do what God is calling us to do. That's going to mean some of us are going to have to rearrange some of the ways we're spending our money so that we can fund the vision that's in front of us in a practical way. It's just a realistic way for us to do what God's calling us to do. It has some dollars attached to it to make it possible. But beyond that, it's going to require some of us to sacrifice in other ways, to say, you know what, I knew it feels weird to go across my workspace to this person that doesn't know Christ, but I'm going to start building a relationship. Or my neighbor who doesn't know Christ, you know what, I feel weird doing it, but I just feel like I'm supposed to go instead of stay home, to go reach out to them and help them understand the gospel. That family member that doesn't know Jesus, I just feel like God's telling me I have to go. I don't know how it'll turn out. God, can you tell me that they're going to receive me well, that they're going to like what I share? God doesn't tell us all that stuff. God just says, go, and I will show you in the middle of your going. It's going to require us to sacrifice, require us to pray. It's going to require us to refuse to spectate, to be on the sidelines and watch others go do the ministry. Watch others go forward. It's going to say, you know what, God, I'm going to get out of my seat. I'm going to go do what God is calling me to do in the world around me, to use my gifts and my passions. It's going to require us to walk by faith and not just sight. And it's going to require us to be all in. But we serve a big, awesome God. And God's going to do some things through us as a church in the years to come that we just didn't even dream possible. People are going to be baptized here that we thought, I can't believe they gave their life to Christ. Friends of ours. We're going to do something on behalf of God and our world around us where I just can't believe God's using me to do this. I thought that was maybe for them or them, but God's using me to do this. Some of you are going to feel called into vocational ministry. Some of you are going to become missionaries. Some of you are going to go on mission trips, and you've never thought about going on a mission trip before, and you're going to go there, and you're going to catch the bug before having your life used for the gospel, and it's going to change you forever. Some of you are going to make sacrifice of your money and say, you know what, I don't know how I can afford it. I feel like God's saying to do this. I can't afford that. And God's going to show up even in your finances and provide back to you everything you need to do everything God's going to call you to do as we move forward together. And for that, I'm excited. I'm excited to see God do things that I don't expect. I can only imagine Abram walking into the land saying, okay, I think we're here. Now what, God? and then God taking on an adventure that changes all the rest of the book of Genesis. I want to share a few things as I close the time that we have here this morning. First of all, today on your way out, you're going to get this prayer and discussion guide for All In, which is what we're calling the next 5-6 weeks around our church, really the next 2 years around our church, All In. You're going to take this home, and what I want you to do with this week is I want you to read every part of it that you possibly can. I'd like you to read through the entirety, because some of it, you caught some vision today, you heard some things, but you're going to go home and it's going to feel a little muddy. I think he said we're doing this. I'm not quite sure about that. This is going to answer all those questions in ways that I can't do just on Sunday. And in addition, there's devotions in here for you to begin doing over the next weeks, and discussion guide, and a lot of information that's going to be in here. I'd like you to take that, spend some time with it, pray about it. There'll also be a commitment card that's in here on a practical level. We've got to go all in. On a financial level, we're going to say, God, I need to walk by faith and not by sight. I need to do what you're calling me to do. Just tell me what to do. And here's my belief. If we'll all do whatever God tells us to do, we're not going to haggle people. We're not going to pressure people. That's just not who we are as a church. That's not where we're going. We're going to call people to pray. And we're going to say, act in faith on whatever God tells you to do. And if you do that, then we'll have everything we need for the future that's in front of us. In addition to that, next week we're going to start a 5-week series called All In. We're going to talk about what does it look like for me to be all in as a follower of Jesus? What does it look like for me to walk and trust God with my life, my very life that he's given to me? What does it look like for me to sacrifice? What does it look like for me to be caught up in this bigger mission of changing eternity for the future of all history that's in front of me and my friends and my family? We're going to spend that. And here's what I need you to do. A couple things I want to ask of every one of you here today. First of all, I really need you to be here for the next 5 weeks. Most of you are here on a regular basis. Some of you are sometimes you stay up a little bit Saturday night. It's hard to get there on Sunday morning, those kind of things. We all have those things that happen in our life. I really need you to be here with your church family for the next 5 weeks, to be present, to be listening, to be praying with us, to be standing with us, to be moving forward with us in every conversation that we're going to have over the next 5 weeks, which means that some of you got soccer games, other things happening, there's things that maybe you could go to on a Sunday. I'm asking you to do your best to cancel those things and keep church at the center of your schedule over the next 5 weeks as we come together around this incredibly defining season that we're calling All In. The second thing I want to ask of each of you is I really want you to find a small group to be part of. There's just something you're not going to get unless you're part of a small group during this season. You say, well, Brad, my schedule's crazy. I know, our schedules are all crazy. It's very difficult. But for the next 5 weeks, if you can't do it year-round for the next 5 weeks, would you find a group to be part of? We have 26 groups starting this week. They're going to be studying All In. 26 groups. What we try to do is remove everything that could get in the way of you being part of a group. We have groups that meet Sunday morning. We have groups that meet Sunday night. There's childcare on Sunday nights if you have children. Some groups are here in the building on Sunday nights. Some are in homes on Sunday nights. We have groups that are meeting on Wednesday nights here in the building, elsewhere in the area around us. We have groups that meet before work. We have groups that meet after work. We have everything you can imagine to be part of All In. You say, well, I don't know how I can fit in my schedule. I just ask you, go home today, pray about it, figure out, find some way to take a step towards being part of a group here as we do this through Anthem to be part of All In. As well, if you have a family, I'd encourage you, bring your family together at home. Pray about it, talk about it, even with your young kids. To talk about, this is what we're talking about. Mommy and daddy are talking about that. This is what we're praying about. Bring them into the conversation because it'll change them as well. The third thing I want to ask you to do is to read the daily devotions that are in the All In guide that you're going to get here this morning. There's daily devotions starting February 4th. Not this week, but starting next week, starting February 4th. They're very simple daily devotions. They're going to help you begin to think about, what is God doing in my life in this season of my life? Where's God leading me? What do I need to be praying about? And help you on that journey, and I think that'll help you a ton. And the last thing I want to ask of you is simply that you'd pray. You think, okay, no big deal. No, I mean pray. Not just say a prayer, but pray and open your heart to God's voice. Say, God, I'm going to pray that you help me to do whatever you tell me to do next. Will you help me to know what your go is for me? What's obedience look like for me? What does surrender look like for me? And pray. Say, God, will you show me How do I be part of this bigger vision of Anthem? Not only a church member who attends on Sundays, but how can I be part of the mission to accomplish the vision of seeing our world reached with the gospel all around us? And we together, we will act and walk by faith and not by sight only, not just with our human intellect or our human plans, but driven by God's Spirit forward, doing what God has called us to do. Being here all 5 Sundays, that would mean the world to me as we do this as a family. To find a group to be part of, to discuss, to pray, that may be transformative in your life beyond what's just going to happen on Sunday. To find a way to open your heart and pray, to spend time in devotions, to seek God in a way that maybe you don't normally do on a regular basis. And God will do a work through you. There you go. There's our 2-year vision. This is where we're headed, what we believe in ministry, outreach, why it matters, why we can't wait, why the 400,000 people that are all around us, they matter. They're waiting for somebody to go. The Bible says, how will they believe if nobody goes? How will they understand if nobody explains to them? We want to do that to our children, our students, the adults, our neighbors, our friends, our family, for the sake of the gospel and for the name and renown of Jesus Christ. Let's stand to our feet all across this room, and let's pray exactly that here today.